My name is Brian Becker. I'm the National Coordinator of the Answer Coalition. I want to thank you all for coming. There are going to be thousands more joining us between now and 1:30. We're going to be joined by Cynthia McKinney, Cindy Sheehan, Ralph Nader, Ramsey Clark, Iraq War veterans, people from all walks of life coming together. Now let me ask you, why is it that grassroots organizing, the traditional methods, putting up posters, handing out leaflets, have become a crime? It's because the government fears the people. They know that we can organize. They know we can take this message into our communities, our campuses, into our workplaces, and yes, right into the rank and file of the U.S. military and say we won't fight for imperialist wars. So we're going to stay strong, sisters and brothers. We're going to be disciplined today. We're going to march on Halliburton. Halliburton. We're going to march on the Mortgage Bankers Association. We're going to march on the Washington Post.
Say we're black, Latinos, Arab, Asians, and white. No more this race, this war defends our civil rights.
No jobs. We need war. Without war, who's going to build the circuit boards? Who's going to build the, all the computer stuff that runs our tanks and most of the military and the satellites? How many military personnel would be out of a job if we had no war? What would they do? We are already without jobs. Could you imagine no war and all the U.S. soldiers home with no more jobs?
They're saying money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
The problem is that our economy is so bad that we can't make the jobs. So we go to war. We go to war and we give the citizens of America jobs. All they got to do is enlist in the military. You enlist in the military, you have a job. All these people complaining about jobs, go enlist in the military. You'll have a job.
I see.
You'll have a job, you'll have job security, you'll have a check, you'll have a place for your family. You won't always be dead. Not everyone dies. Hey, that's a small price to pay for you to have a job. Otherwise, don't complain about not having a job.
We're human beings. There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
If they tell you to go, there is something you should know.
There is something you should know.
They wave the flag when you attack.
They raise the flag when you attack.
When you come home, they turn their back.
When you come home, they turn their back.
We can chase down all our enemies, bring them to their knees. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. Whoa, we may even find a solution.
If you've been in the war zone,
If you've been in the war zone,
brothers and sisters, welcome home.
brothers and sisters, welcome home.
A lot of us know how it feels.
A lot of us know how it feels.
Speaking out will help you heal.
Speaking out will help you heal.
Sound off.
1, 2,
Sound off.
3, 4.
Break it on down.
1, 2, 3, 4. Occupation no more.
Boy Scouts of America, don't go to war. They're training you at an early age for militarism.
No justice, no peace.
U.S.
South of the Middle East.
So what do you think of Obama's empire so far?
Well, I think that Obama should change his name to Barack Bush.
Even find a solution to hunger and disease. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. I sing power to the peaceful, love to the peaceful. I sing.
We're not leaving until the wars end.
Imam Mahdi Bray.
We are here today to say that if you want to talk about terror, war is terror. And the greatest terror is the terror of racism, militarism, and blind materialism. We say what I've been taught in my faith tradition as a Muslim, that all life is sacred. And indeed, if you take a life, it is as if you have killed all of humanity. And if you save a life, it is as if you have saved all of humanity. That's what we say. We say to this president that life is sacred. Life is sacred. And for the love of God, stop this madness. Walls of empire does not make us safe. Look around us. How are we safe? By spending trillions of dollars dropping smart bombs on dumb missions while there's no jobs, no homes, education in shambles, and people living in the street. We say, stop the war, spend the money right here at home on the people. Bring our money home, bring our troops home. As a black man and as a Muslim in America who has to worry about driving while black and flying while Muslim, I say to this president, unlike Rush Limbaugh, we don't want you to fail, Obama. President Obama, we don't want you to fail, and that's why we're here. We're here to help you. We're here to help you by telling you to check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love the values that the people of America love, and that is justice and freedom. And so we say today that we who believe in freedom cannot rest until our troops are brought home. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until the tears of a Palestinian mother is just as valued as the tears of an Israeli mother, and they're all dry with compassion and justice. We cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest while our immigration brothers and sisters are being profiled and detained. And we who believe in freedom cannot rest while the civil rights and the civil liberties of Muslims in America are being eroded. And finally, we say that we who believe in freedom, we will go back home. We will work together. We will pray together. We will organize together. We will come together. We will mobilize together. And we will demonstrate to the world that we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Violence brings one thing, more and more of the same. Military madness, the smell of flesh and burning pain. So I sing out to the masses, stand up if you're still sane. To all of us gone crazy, I sing this one refrain. We can chase down all our enemies, bring them to their knees. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. Whoa, we may even find a solution to hunger and disease. We
war, I want to bring up Mathis Chereau and Robin Murray. And for Military Families Speak Out, I want to bring up Elaine Brower. Give it up for them.
How y'all doing? Are we ready to see an end to these occupations? My name is Mathis, and I'm a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. I am an Iraq war resistor myself. I refused my illegal and genocidal orders in 2008. I am honored to join you here today, although very, very sad that it's yet another year that we have to be here protesting this genocide.
My son did 3 tours in what we call the global war on terror, which really is the global war of terror.
Yes!
We live in an empire, and this empire is spreading around the world, and now we have genocide in the Middle East. This is genocide. This country was built on it. I have had enough. I don't want to be up here next year, to be here for 8 years. What do you say we end the wars this year?
Yes!
You know, I used to think that this flag right here in my hand represented a whole lot of goodness. I was raised to believe that these stars and stripes represented freedom, represented universal brotherhood and sisterhood, that this flag represented something good and pure that our founding fathers fought and died to forge. And I don't know about that anymore. I wonder what this flag stands for exactly.
Empire! It stands for empire!
You know, I'm gonna tell you something about this flag. When I was a young person, about 13 years old, I was in a cadet program, and I had a really good friend named Steve, and he taught me how to fold this flag. And you know, when you're 13 years old, you really don't think about what that means to you. But in 2006, when his Ranger Battalion was pulling that draped flag over his casket, I realized just what that meant. And now it means pain and suffering to me.
We're gonna show you what this flag means to us right now.
Burn it down!
Burn the empire! Burn it!
No more slavery, no more service in the U.S. military furthering these genocides. We are done being servants to an unrighteous cause, and this flag is no longer my master.
All right!
That's what we think of this country.
Veterans, soldiers, resist. You have an obligation.
All right! Hey, Uncle Sam!
Hey, Uncle Sam!
We remember Vietnam!
We remember Vietnam!
We don't want your Iraq war!
We don't want your Iraq war!
Bring our troops back to our shore!
Bring our troops back to our shore!
How y'all doing? Let me hear you! Good afternoon, sisters and brothers in the anti-war movement. My name is Asantwa Nkrumah Ture. I'm an organizer within U.S. Wars. That's NUSWars.org. We are an organization that was founded back this past fall in anticipation of President Obama's speech escalating the war in Afghanistan, something that we already knew. We want to thank the courageous members of the Answer Coalition for organizing this event, because we know in today's time it takes a lot of courage to organize an anti-war demonstration in the age of Obama. President Barack Obama, this country's first black president, the new pro-war president of the pro-war Democratic Party. We of NUS Wars demand several things: an immediate ceasefire in Iraq and Afghanistan. We want to bring all U.S. troops home in the fastest, safest way possible. Stop predator drones that kill innocent civilians. Stop all forms organize, and politically educate ourselves and each other against this bloodthirsty war. Let's all tell President Obama that we ain't drinking no more Kool-Aid. The anti-war movement is back. The anti-war movement is back. The anti-war movement is back. To all of you, I want to plead with you, I want to beg you, and I'm a sister who's not too proud to beg. Don't let anyone call you a racist or a sellout because you are righteously opposed against this war. Yes! We are righteously opposed to this war and President Obama's health care plan. Yeah. The health care plan of this country's first black president, the pro-war president of the pro-war Republican Party. Yeah. So everybody, my sisters and brothers in this anti-war movement, please maintain your organization and your courage. I want you to turn to your left. Turn to your left. Look at that White House and repeat after me. End U.S. wars. End U.S. wars. End U.S. wars.
Halliburton and Bechtel.
Halliburton and Bechtel.
Think this war is really swell.
Think this war is really swell.
Corporate profits on the rise.
Corporate profits on the rise.
While the politicians lie.
While the politicians lie.
The machine will be prevented from working at all.
We're not going to keep asking. Please back up.
Excuse me, we have a right to be here.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do, sir. You don't know the frickin' law. Go back and read your law book.
Please back up.
It's called freedom of assembly.
Back up.
Freedom of assembly.
Who's pushing?
Back up away from the kids. Freedom of speech.
Sir, I'm going to tell you now, once we get this thing started, stay back here.
No, we don't have to back up. We have a right to be here.
We have a right to be arrested once we
We're legally observing.
Back up, sir.
Do you really feel threatened by peace activists? That you have to put these barriers?
Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up.
This way, sir.
Don't push me.
Yes, if you don't move when he asks you, he will push.
Move back. Move back. Move back.
Back up. Back up. Back up.
In one war, an illegal war in Iraq, $720 million every bloody day in Iraq. What would that pay for? That would take care of the health care needs of everybody in this country. You throw in Afghanistan, you throw in the plans for attacking Venezuela and Bolivia and anybody else that doesn't fall down and kiss up to the corporatist capitalist model, the broken model that's made for the new feudal system, and all the brainwashed minions that just go along because they're afraid. They're afraid to use that gray matter between their ears and use that heart that's in their chest and their consciousness, that they know that they should be living a responsible life and be responsible to their planet and their fellow man, instead of going off fighting and dying for corporate profits. These wars don't have any honor. They're for the war machine that makes money off of death and exploitation and lies, and you bunch of retards haven't got a heart left.
Who are you working for? Are you working for the public or for the war machine?
We're not against the hardworking men and women who work at the Washington Post. We're against the editorial policy and the editorial board of the Washington Post, who only give lies and propaganda justifications for the war. First the war in Iraq, then the war in Afghanistan, for the endless war against the Palestinian people. So we want to take these coffins. Let's everybody come up a little bit. But we want the coffins to come forward. Let those coffins come in front of you. And this is for the editors of the Washington Post, the editorial policy.
Money for jobs and education.
Not for war and occupation.
Money for jobs and education.
Not for war and occupation.
Money for jobs and education.
but some weren't satisfied. They started conquering folks, implemented governments to oppress and control, unpiled empires of power and greed, and now if you live in excess and the rest are in need, but simply beating some and bribing others couldn't succeed. They needed hate to separate and some fear to feed. See, we're inclined to be kind and think from the heart, so they devised new systems that would keep us apart. They invented class, invented race, gender, and religion. With precision, they conquered through division. Divide and conquer, separate and control, and keep us fighting each other, cause every empire's goal. So don't look behind the curtain, don't follow the strings. Keep us fighting the symptoms of while you spread the disease. Western colonists erased the tribal way of life and invented states to separate by artificial lines. Warring tribes grouped together to destabilize and pit the natives on each other, keep enemy disguise. And now there's genocide and intertribal war, post-colonial Rwanda, Uganda, and Darfur. And the West looks on in impotence like, what can we do? When it was us who painted hate between Tutsi and Hutu. When it was us who persecuted Jews and made them insecure. And now our puppet state of Israel, our dominance ensures U.S. occupation, Middle East, to make the oil flow. Keep the Arabs fighting Jews or other Arabs, PLO.
It's time for us to stop thinking that it matters who sits in the White House or which party controls Congress. Our country has been taken over by militarists. It is up to each of us, to you, and you, and you, and me, to be sugar in the gas tanks, to be sand in the gears of the war machine. Only we can stop the madness. Our country spends more on the war machine than the rest of the world combined, and Obama increased the bloated Pentagon budget. Obama isn't ending the war in Iraq. He's keeping 50,000 soldiers there and who knows how many mercenaries. He's not ending the war in Afghanistan. He's escalating it. My field is Latin America. The hope of the world lies in what's happening in Venezuela and Bolivia and Ecuador and other places where the people have taken control and are building real democracy. But the Pentagon, the State Department, the corporations, and yes, the president are not going to allow that to happen without a fight. They're building 7 new military bases in Colombia, 4 in Panama. They're still training soldiers at the School of the Americas. Iraq is important. Afghanistan is important. And by God, Latin America is crucial to our own freedom. It's time to stop being polite. It's time for every one of us to stop cooperating with the war machine. We need a movement of massive non-cooperation. Shut it down! Shut it down! Shut it down!
9/11 was used as the basis of a justification of what the Bush administration called the global war on terror.
We all know why we're here. It is to stop 7 years of a completely illegitimate occupation of Iraq and to protest the offensive our new President Obama is waging in Afghanistan. Torture and aggressive preemptive war are war crimes. But just one moment, straight up, don't look to the White House to solve this. Don't look to Congress to solve it. The solution to this terrible direction of this society is right here, beginning right here today. We have the responsibility. If our friends tell us, well, I don't know, I think Obama is ending the war in Iraq, I believe the hype, we have the responsibility to say no. 17 permanent U.S. bases in Iraq. This is a permanent occupation. Get your butt out in the streets and protest. If our friends say to us, well, I don't know, I thought torture was wrong under Bush, but now Dick Cheney is making an argument for maybe we need to torture, maybe it'll keep us safer. You tell your friends, hell no, torture for any reason is wrong. It's against the interests of humanity, and we will not allow it to be carried out in our name.
bombs were dropped on Pakistan by George Bush, but I'm kind of into it with Barack Obama. Maybe he has a point. Maybe we should make war on Yemen and Iran and Somalia and continue the occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan. What are you going to tell your friends? Hell? Hell? Hell no! Get your butt out in the street and protest. And most especially, if your friends say, I wouldn't have signed up for the U.S. military with George Bush, but I don't know, I'm kind of into fighting for Barack Obama. What are you going to tell them? Hell no! Bring the We Are Not Your Soldiers tour, Iraq vets and Afghanistan vets into high school classrooms. WeAreNotYourSoldiers.org. And the world still can't wait.
Unite and fight our enemies in sight. We share a common plight. Take my hand and hold it tight. In the street, our feet will beat them to retreat. People united will never be defeated. The people united
will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
The United States is the biggest terrorist organization on the planet, and I'm here to help shut it down. I see it ending through things like this, through mass movements of people, through people creating counter-economies, through people building collectives and refusing to be a part of this system, standing in solidarity with oppressed people and helping them in whatever way possible, and coming together and breaking down national borders and to reclaim our world through civil disobedience, through refusing to participate, through creating democratic communities and workplaces. Democracy, freedom, liberty, all of these things come from below, and they have to start with us and spread. We have more in common with the people over there who we're oppressing with our military might. We have more in common with them than the leaders who decide that we'll both fight and die. The people who profit from deciding that we will fight and die, it's a conflict of interest, because if they profit from us fighting and dying, they'll continue to choose that we'll fight and die. And so by submitting to this, then we've submitted to constant death. And until we refuse, until we resist, and until we take back the power to ourselves, till we make decisions for ourselves, they will continue in this cycle.
Shame on you. You're a killer, Obama! All of y'all are killers! We'll never be defeated. What you really need? What you really need? Justice. What you really want? What you really want? Justice.
We're trampling all over cultures, over communities, over families.
They're our brothers. They're our sisters. We support war resistance. Iraq for Iraqis. Troops out now. This is for you, L.A. Burton. 1 million Iraqis dead. This is for you, Halliburton. 1 million Iraqis dead. You, Halliburton! From Iraq to Palestine! Occupation is a crime! From Iraq to Palestine! Occupation is a crime!
They armed Saddam Hussein. They armed the Taliban against the Soviet Union. You know, it's hypocrisy and it's lies, and people buy it because we're in the zombie mentality, watching corporate media and everything, and people no longer do deep analysis. And part of that is because we're being kept so busy to afford healthcare. Sometimes people have to work all the time just to afford the basic things they need, so they don't have time to do deep analysis. And when the only information they get is this pro-capitalist regime media, corporate media, I mean, if that's the only information they have, they're going to act on that. These corporations own the media, so it serves their interest to perpetuate these wars. So of course they're going to tell us things that are going to try to drum up pro-war, pro-imperialist sentiment.
Iraq is under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Afghanistan is under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Palestine is under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Stand up, fight back! Our schools are under attack. Our homes are under attack. What do we do? Stand up, fight back! There's Morgan and Stanley right there. Those are the criminals. Those are the criminals. Those tax dollars. Those are the ones in which our government is still giving tax dollars to these guys. These are the criminals. You know, we put black people, brown people, poor people, they get jail and hell, and Morgan Stanley, they get bail and sale. We say enough of this. These are the individuals who are taking the money from all of America. America, those on the sidelines who are listening, we're marching for you. We're marching for your schools. We're marching for your right to have homes. We're right in Washington, D.C., lights are going out because people can't afford to pay their utility bills. Yet we can afford to give money to Morgan Stanley, to Citibank, to all of these other corporations, these robbers, these robber barons, these crooks, these thieves. They're the ones who should be in jail. This government has a warped understanding of what criminality is. They will pack the jail with poor folks, but they let the rich folks rob us and then come back and give them more money and let them re-rob us. We said no. We said no. We said no. We said no. We will not take our money and continue to take our tax dollars and spend trillions of dollars on smart bombs and dump them on dumb missions in Afghanistan and other parts of the world. Who's streets? Who's war? Money for jobs and education.
We need to give the people of Afghanistan and by democratic I don't mean elections. I mean like where people set policy, consensus of people. They need to tell us what we should do. Now that we've gone in there, it's kind of like if you go into somebody's house and you break all their stuff, mess up their house, whatever, you don't then get to decide how to fix it. They need to tell you what you need to do. So we need to hear from the common people of Afghanistan. No doubt they're owed reparations, no doubt they're owed humanitarian aid. If the United States is going to be involved at all, it needs to be under the direct democratic permission of the people of Afghanistan, the people of Iraq, the people of Pakistan and Yemen.
All the world is wearing pink. All I want to be in that number when all the world is wearing pink. When all the world has human rights. When all the world has human rights. All I want to be in that number when all the world has human rights. When the walls come down. When the walls come down on the West Bank. On the West Bank. When the walls come down on the West Bank. All I want to be in that number when all the world is wearing pink.
Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on.
Well, I was among the people not surprised by that. I don't think he ever really said anything that indicated otherwise. Unfortunately, a lot of people's sentiment, anti-war sentiment, was siphoned into his campaign, but I don't think in any real terms he ever gave an indication he would do anything else. It's a crystallized example of why the Democratic Party and the two-party system doesn't offer any real options. You're choosing between war, and empire, and corporate capitalism. So he never presented a real alternative. He had the illusion of an alternative, and what makes this moment so important and powerful now is that it's become unprecedentedly obvious that the Democrats do not pose alternative to war, and so we're going to have to make another alternative.
How do you see making that alternative?
It's got to come from the people. It has to come from the ground. You cannot rely on a leader, especially a leader who's inherently beholden to corporate interests, because that's the way the system is set up. So it has to be organic. It has to come from the people. It has to be democratic in a real sense. I think that if everyone who feels those sentiments, who feels profoundly grieved and outraged at the injustices perpetuated by our government against us and against those around the world, if they take that energy and use it and speak it every day and as much as they can, then that's a force that has to be responded to. So it's the people, and to believe in anything but the people is a mistake.
How do you feel about the American people? Do you feel as if they have been pacified by consumerism, and that's why things aren't really changing?
I think that's part of it, but a lot of it is people are just treading water, 2 jobs, trying to hold on to their health care. I mean, it looks like apathy, but I think a lot of what it is a profound sense of powerlessness, and I don't think that's completely unjustified. I think that when you look at what is supposed to be the democratic process in the political system, it is disempowering. Increasingly, you're seeing the student movements happening as privatization hits them, as budget cuts, while the obscene amount of money is being spent on war hits them, the connection to healthcare, increased joblessness. I mean, it's all coalescing into a moment, and we have to grab that. I really feel like there's something happening here.
My name is Aisha Fleary, and I'm here to represent the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. We are thankful to have a space today to speak about the U.S.'s ever-broadening assault against oppressed peoples of the world. We stand in solidarity with anyone who is fighting to retain control of their lands, resources, and dignity. We are against this imperialist-driven war which seeks to monopolize the world's resources at the cost of the lives of innocent men, women, and children. They say they are doing this for us, when in reality most citizens of this country don't even know what these wars are for. The U.S. is threatening Iran because it says it's a threat to the Middle East. The U.S. has invaded and devastated Iraq because of some imagined weapons of mass destruction. They side with Israel when they occupy the lands of the Palestinian people illegally. They militarize Haiti and undermine their government cloaked in a robe of humanitarianism. They've launched AFRICOM as a means to control the people and steal more resources from Africa. This is the government that says it's working in our interest. Well, Black is Back Coalition is here to say that it's not in our interest. Terror is terror, and this government is carrying out a terroristic agenda around the world, and because our president has a brown face, we are supposed to look away. In our neighborhoods, we continue to lose our homes, and unemployment is not improving. Many Black communities are in a state of perpetual police repression, but this is just a continuation of a history of terror. This country was built on the blood of millions of people and continues to oppress these very same people. How can we expect a country that has historically gained what it has by illegal means to automatically stop? It has committed crime after crime against the world, starting with heinous murders of millions of indigenous people right here on this land. Their blood was spilled to make way for government agendas as the indigenous folks fought and died. Millions were being imported from Africa and being kept as beasts or burdens to build the cities of this economy and this country. Now our indigenous brothers and sisters are relegated to modern-day concentration camps called reservations. As capitalists continue to encroach on their lands, now we must call an end to it all and watch with gleeful eyes as the empire crumbles to our feet. And this country must continue to revolt, not just to let this government know that we're unhappy, because they already know we're unhappy, but to let the rest of the world know that the citizens of this country do not condone what the U.S. is doing. We stand in solidarity with oppressed people fighting for peace, the return of all resources, and a rightful revolution. Uhuru and thank you.
Imperialismo y Bagsak, U.S. imperialist, #1 terrorist. We, the Alliance for a Just and Lasting Peace in the Philippines, raise our fists in solidarity with the people of Iraq, Afghanistan, the Philippines, Palestine, and all occupied nations in their courageous struggle for life, liberation, and national sovereignty. Filipinos know the true cost of war. We have struggled against U.S. occupation and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's U.S.-backed reign of terror. The blood of the Filipino people is on U.S. hands. The U.S. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo regime has exploited our homeland, raped its women, stolen its resources, terrorized its people, and forced the migration of over 4,000 people, mostly women, every day. We are here because the U.S. is there, raping our homeland. Filipinos know that war rages here in the U.S. in the form of low wages, no money for education, and scapegoating of immigrant communities. War rages on for the Filipino World War II veterans. The racist U.S. policies have denied them their promised benefits, left them to survive on $1,400 per year, left them to die without ever seeing justice. War rages on for our Filipino youth here and other youth of color. Targeted by recruiters, they are lured to the slaughter by false promises of money for education and repulsively trained in the act of murdering their own people. We raged back against U.S. militarism in all its forms, whether in Iraq, where more than 1 million have died and 4 million made refugees, where U.S., through the use of depleted uranium, terrorized even babies not yet conceived, even future generations. Or in Afghanistan, where 200,000 U.S. troops and mercenaries bind, gag, and execute pregnant mothers and drag school children from their beds in the night to be slaughtered. Whether in the Philippines, Palestine, or countless others, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, where Obama's administration continues the slaughter against people already devastated by U.S. imperialism. We, the people, raged back against U.S. war, occupation, militarism in all its forms. U.S. out of the Philippines, Iraq, Afghanistan, everywhere. The people united
will never be defeated. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
The people united will never be defeated. Ang tao, ang bayan, ngayon ay lumalaban.
In November, my classmates and I created a PowerPoint presentation. We highlighted the amount of money that our country spends on the war, on the people of Iraq. I say people of Iraq because when you drop bombs on an entire country, you're not only just killing terrorists, you're killing innocent families, men, women, and children. We learned that our government spends over $700 million a day on this criminal war at the expense of our public education, at the expense of health care, and at the expense of our communities. Because when the Congress decide that they want to go to war, they do not sign up their children, they do not sign up themselves. They prey on the poor and hardworking class youth who are just looking for decent jobs and a promise of education. They prey on students like me to fight their war. Well, I have something to say to them. Go fight your own war. Keep your military recruiters out of our schools. Bring back our sisters and brothers who are in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if you're too weak or too greedy to listen to the people who voted you into office, then maybe you should find another job. Money for jobs and education. Not for war and occupation. Money for jobs and education. Not for war and occupation. Se ve, se siente, el pueblo está presente.
The street, brothers and sisters, is the Mortgage Bankers Association. That's why we're leaving these foreclosure notices, letting them know it's unacceptable that when the banks can't pay their debts, they take all the money of the people. You see what's happening? We gave them a foreclosure notice, and the police took the foreclosure notice back. What about defending those millions of families who are being foreclosed?
The cops are saying she's littering.
Taking the foreclosure on the bankers. Why don't you come to our house and take the foreclosure notice of our homes and protect the rights of the human beings, not the criminal bankers? Foreclose the banks, not our homes. Foreclose the banks, not our homes.
Take it to the Capitol. Take it to the Capitol. Take it to the Capitol. Don't take it to the White House. Take it to the Capitol.
War resisters! We support war resisters!
We support war resisters!
We support war resisters!
We're just arriving at the VA, the Veterans Administration, and we're going to hear from the vets themselves, from Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, from veterans of other wars, We want to hear their voices. And then we're going to go back to the White House.
Do you have any ideas? No comment?
The most important is the young people of today realizing this war is costing you, the young generation, schools, education, grants. It's all being taken away from you.
We are Americans. We know what injustice looks like. We held people in slavery because of their race. We forced people of Japanese ancestry into concentration camps. We persecuted people under McCarthy because of their political beliefs. We, Americans, have a special responsibility to see that these abuses never happen again. We have no right to persecute people based solely on their religion. We have no reason to be at war with Islam. In America, if Muslims are not safe, no one is safe. I represent Project Salam. Please join us to stop this war against Muslims.
We're here from California. We're Project Censored, and we address one of the biggest problems going on in our country. It's the fact that people can't get factual information to understand how much is going on and is going on so wrong. Though I don't need to tell that to everybody that's here today. This is March Madness that started 7 years ago in this recent incarnation of an illegal occupation, an illegal invasion, and the destruction and further decimation and racist decimation of the country of Iraq and the people of Iraq, as well as Afghanistan and other parts of the world. And at Project Censored, one of the things that we've covered over the years, these undercovered stories, and this story is still out there, and yet people don't want to talk about it. In fact, the corporate media in this country don't even want to talk about what happens to veterans and soldiers that are Americans. Also, don't want to talk about the cost of occupation, and I don't just mean the economic cost where the money going into bombs and missiles and death and destruction takes money away from healthcare and from education. I'm talking about the death of over 1 million Iraqis. That's one of the most censored stories around this war that we don't get to hear about. The death of over 1 million people. The opinion research business over in England did a scientific survey and study of this. This is a matter of fact. The Associated Press in this country a year ago, this coming month in April, published stories claiming that 87,000 Iraqis had died, and they ran it 3 times, knowing that it's completely false. Liars! The Iraqis need us to help stand up. We need to stand up against this illegal occupation, and we need to fight for freedom of the press and free speech.
Perhaps the most telling sign of the occupation was that Tsar Bremer, soon after the occupation, when he eliminated every single law on the books of the country of Iraq, he kept one, and that was Saddam Hussein's law denying workers the right to organize, and to this day, that law is on the books. But Iraqi unions have continued to organize despite this law. They have endured violence, raid, arrest, seizing of their offices, both by the Iraqi authorities and the U.S. authorities. But teachers, hotel workers, oil workers, dock workers, factory workers in Iraq have organized. We're in regular touch with them. They are progressive. They are secular. They are against the oil stealing. They are against privatization. They are a powerful force for the future of Iraq, and we all have to support them. They are inspiring, and they're just like us. They get up every morning and they try to go to work if they can have a job to support their families. U.S. Labor Against the War is now turning our attention to moving the U.S. labor movement to oppose the war in Afghanistan and return the billions and billions of dollars being misspent.
The flight of U.S. industry from U.S. shores to find cheaper resources and labor with no unions and no environmental or health and safety regulations, a process known as globalization, has required new military thinking. To protect U.S. corporate interests abroad, we now have our military in over 135 countries with close to 800 permanent foreign military bases. Our now globalized economy will mean permanent war as U.S. corporate-controlled government seeks to protect the U.S. corporate interests abroad. As national populations in these countries seek to reclaim their national resources and wealth for their own people, they will be accused of terrorism. And so, as Bush told us, we will have a permanent war on terror. War will be part of politics in this country from now on. As the U.S. military enters country after country in the interest of the corporations and class that they represent, they use a common tactic called divide and conquer. They seek to divide the population, breaking down their unity and solidarity, and supporting one against the other. So we see Sunni versus Shia, Kurd versus Arab, one tribal leader versus the next. The peace movement in this country has also been divided. We have been unable to find a way to work together. And this has been one reason that the peace movement in this country has not approached its potential. There is a movement calculus that goes like this. If one organization can bring out 100 people and another one can bring out 100 people, together they bring out 1,000 people. Let's bring out tens of thousands of people.
Today we are here because we stand with the people of Palestine, the people of Iraq, the people of Afghanistan, and we stand with our brothers and sisters that are being sent around the world to slaughter other poor and working people around the world. We are here to say to President Obama across the street here that we will not fight for his wars anymore, that these wars are illegal and immoral, and we will end them because a mass movement of the people in the streets will end them. When we refuse to fight, we will end these wars.
We didn't come here out of hatred of this country, because so many of us believe in the values of community and the building of solidarity and the freedom that supposedly the United States of America is based on. But we did come here to have a very clear statement about empire and imperialism and the domination of people by economic and political and military means. I just have a couple of things to say about empire. The first observation is that no empire has ever defeated history. The Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and for some of you, maybe even if you consider this, the Soviet Empire, and the British Empire, and now finally the US Empire, confronting a set of conditions that it cannot overcome. Why? Because it cannot defeat history. History is on the side of the righteous. We understand that from the faith tradition of Islam, but also from the radical democratic tradition of resistance to evil. We understand that empire cannot win. It is historically impossible. So what we say to the brother occupying this building over here is that regardless of your wonderful rhetoric, what we say to you is that even if you paint a nice smiley face on empire, it is still empire and it will still be defeated. And then finally, what is required to defeat empire? Historically, there are two ways to do it. One way is anti-imperialist war, but the other way is disengagement, radical disengagement. When we look at Gandhi, what we looked at was a man and a movement that said we will not cooperate with evil. We will not buy the products of corporations that are involved in the war system. We will not patronize the political parties and the political personalities that say nothing about the genocide in Gaza, that say nothing about the war going on that kills hundreds of thousands of people. When Brian Becker and I and other people went to Iraq in 1998, we saw in motion the mass killing of people through sanctions. Organize, mobilize, refuse, resist. Organize, mobilize, refuse, resist.
My name is Francis Vijay, and I'm the mayoral candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation last year. We ran to make 1 point and 1 point only. Why is it that people like me, a 26-year-old college student, a mother, a working class person, which is the majority of this country, why is it that we have a handful of billionaires that control everything we say and do in our country? We need to stand up, organize. We ran a campaign to build a movement, and I am proud to ask all of you today to help us build that movement. That was a campaign that we're still moving people to organize them. We want a socialist society. We are tired of the capitalism and the oppression that this government puts on our people every day. Yes. How can we spend millions of dollars a day on criminal wars and occupation, but why is it that there's no money for education? Why is it that there's no money for housing? Where's the money for work? We need to stand against these people and tell them enough is enough. We are not going to leave until this war ends. Are you ready to march? Yeah. Are you ready to march? Our streets! Whose streets? 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 Our streets!
Mr. Cheney, you created the monster.
Get him one! Hail and none! Hail and none!
This fucking guy killed my son! This is the President Bush! I am Latino! I know you have a lot of enemy now! The Latinos are your enemy! No more Bush! No more Obama! We need change now in America! No more kids die! Please, we need to stop this fucking war!
ExxonMobil, BP Shell, take your war and go to hell!
At VotersForPeace.us, we like to break some taboos, and the taboo I want to break today is talking about American empire. You ever hear that discussed in the media? The corporate media never acknowledges that we're an empire, and in fact we are the largest empire in world history, hundreds of bases around the world, millions of troops, spending as much as the whole world combined. Why don't they discuss empire? Because if people realized we were an empire, they would turn against it. If the American people understood what an empire is and what it's doing to our economy, what it's doing to our democracy, what it's doing to our law, they would say no to empire, no to militarism, and no to war. Let me say on empire, the absurdity of empire is so clear in Afghanistan. $1 million per troop for 1 year to keep people in Afghanistan at a time when our economy is collapsing, unemployment at record highs, incomes going down, foreclosures and bankruptcies growing, and we're spending $1 million per troop, borrowed from China, borrowed from Saudi Arabia to fight a war we shouldn't be in. Say no to that empire. Say no to that war. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for our law. Look at the torturers getting away with torturing with no legal challenges to them brought by the Department of Justice. At Voters for Peace, we're trying to bring torture accountability to those lawyers who abuse their law license to authorize torture, a war crime. Empire undermines law. Say no to empire. And finally, empire undermines our democracy. At VotersForPeace.us, you can take a pledge to say, I will only vote for anti-war candidates. That's the way to end empire. Demonstrate, vote, be active, say no to empire. Thank you all.
When confronted with a plutocracy, one that thrives on empire and a flagrant disregard for the law, how are the people to respond? History has shown that when we take to the streets like today, again and again, we can stir the public conscience to act on the side of justice, to stand up and demand that our leadership be held accountable. We are faced with a singular challenge today, a reawakening of a passive public to the atrocities that are now synonymous with the words U.S. government. Secret detentions, extraordinary renditions, waterboarding, secret evidence, torture, murder. With the doctrine of sovereign immunity, we have seen its extension to all government officials and the creation of a two-tiered society. Those above the law and those under the law. Those of us who still cherish that rule of law in this country have a duty to fight for its restoration. As a world superpower, this country wields major influence on other countries. The lawless policies of the Bush administration and now the Obama administration have imperiled our civil liberties and those of others around the world. By waging illegal and immoral invasions on Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States serves as a lawless yet powerful role model to other countries and as an obstructionist force in the future of international cooperation. We must continue to ignite the hearts and minds of Americans. We must not let them forget the unparalleled outrage they felt years ago at seeing those images of Abu Ghraib. We must not let them slip back into complacency as our government wages flagrant abuses on thousands of innocents, all in the name of empire. We must not let this government depersonalize the war crimes we perpetrate daily that benefit big business, but that robs us of jobs, homes, and food. For as long as we allow a campaign of disinformation to continue, we remain complicit in the deliberate horrors perpetrated in the name of empire.
Our dear brother, Reverend Graylin Hagler. It's good to see all your faces out here, because folks think that we have forgotten. We have forgotten that there's a war in Iraq. We've forgotten that there's a war in Afghanistan. That we've forgotten that there's a war against working people right here in the United States. But we're here to say that we have not forgotten a thing, and we intend to hold this administration accountable. We intend to continue to stand up until all the troops are brought home. All the troops are brought home. You see, you can't address unemployment at home unless you begin to bring troops home and stop spending all of that money to wage an illegal and immoral and unethical war in other places, in other countries. We intend to spend what we need to build houses and to get people out of foreclosures, to not bail out the banks, and definitely not supply the military-industrial complex. We want to bring these troops home now. We're here to tell President Obama that when we work to bring change, we didn't just change a face in the White House. Because if he's going to continue with the Bush policies, we might as well have kept Bush. We worked for change, to change the entire paradigm in which this country operates in the world. We organize for change so that working people will not be thrown out in the street. We organize for change so that we can close Guantanamo Base, so that we can end the war in Iraq, so that we would have no more military adventurism around the world. We worked for that, Mr. Obama. And if you understand the constituency that brought you to the White House, then you will begin to bend to be more accountable to those folks who walked streets and knocked on doors to get you elected. We intend to hold you accountable because we are the change. 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 Change. Yes. All across America and throughout other places in the world, people of Arab descent are under
attack. Here is one of their spokesmen who represents their cause, the Vice Chair of the National Council on Arab Americans, Munzer Sleiman. Give it up!
Thanks for being here. It's time to liquidate the military project. It's time to liquidate the empire. We spent $1 trillion on national security state for security, military, and for wars overseas. The war that destructed the country of Iraq. We commemorate 7 years of destruction. Don't be fooled by the circus of election there. It's only a national census based on ethnic and sectarian lines. They claim that to bring democracy and freedom. We saw the result of destruction in Iraq. We saw the millions of displaced people. We saw the hundreds of thousands of killed and wounded. And don't forget, that democracy and that freedom does not apply to some people. It's not good for the will of the Palestinian people who still under siege now for the past of 1,000 days. They are under siege. Lift the siege on the Palestinian now. Lift the siege now. Lift the siege now.
Lift the siege now.
It's time to liquidate this empire, or will be forced to liquidate it by the will of the people throughout the world. It's better to spend $1 trillion on education, on fighting poverty, on health care, on fighting degradation of the environment. This is the time to stop and liquidate this empire. This is the change that we can believe in, not the change of the course of the same. Continue the war, continue the escalation, and continue to put the Arab and Muslim community in this country under siege, under fear, and to continue to have the Arab world and Islamic world a killing field for the war machine.
Yes, we can! Grab the drones! Yes, we can! Bring them home!
7 years ago, I resigned from the U.S. government. 7 years I've been with you all, trying to stop the Bush regime, to try to stop now the Obama regime from all of these endless wars. I have with me on the stage 3 people who have suffered greatly because their children have been killed in these wars. One whose son, John, was killed in Afghanistan. Drugs and Death at Bagram is a new documentary about the costs of war, the costs that we as veterans know about, the costs of suicides by drugs, the cost to our families, the cost that you see of those tombstones that are down on the mall right now that reflect the numbers, the thousands of Americans killed, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Afghans and Iraqis. It's up to us to stop this. You all are the committed, the courageous, the conscientious people that are holding the foundation of what we want our country to be like. We don't want wars and endless wars. We want peace. And right over there at that White House, as we keep putting pressure on this new president, it's up to us. You are the ones that can make that difference.
I come from a small town, Toledo, Ohio, 300,000 people. Our citizens, since the invasion of Afghanistan, have sent to these wars $750 million of tax money just to these wars. Last week, the mayor tells us they're laying off 20% of our police officers. Firefighters are next. Our city parks are going to be closed and the swimming pools this summer. The list goes on in every city across this country. The other cost, of course, is the cost in human suffering. I worked as a hospital corpsman for 3 years during the Vietnam War, and I worked in a Navy hospital and tried to put young men back together when they returned from Vietnam and Cambodia. And I can tell you one thing, Veterans for Peace is done being a good soldier.
I think you represent a majority opinion in this country. That we got to shut down those 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. 7 years ago, an outlaw presidency and vice presidency invaded Iraq on a platform of lies, deceptions, cover-ups. They violated our Constitution, international laws, federal statutes in so doing. And as Ted Koppel of ABC wrote in the New York Times, forget about the reasons for invading Iraq. This is a war for oil. $3 trillion it'll cost us, according to Joe Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winner, the Iraq War. Total toxification, environmental devastation in Iraq, water, food, soil, air, contaminated. We still have 125,000 soldiers there, an almost equal number of corporate contractors, and the country can blow apart at any time. Yeah, that's a real success, isn't it? Our government is banking a lot of revenge in Iraq and Afghanistan against us in the future, with all the deaths of innocent civilians, families, wedding parties blown up. The Army combat captain, Matthew Ho, who resigned last September in protest, it said the following: to put it simply, I failed to see the value or the worth in continued U.S. casualties and expenditures in support of the Afghan government in what is truly a 35-year-old civil war. And then he also said, in both the RC East and South in Afghanistan, I, meaning Matthew Ho, have observed that the bulk of the insurgency fights not for the white banner of the Taliban, but rather against the presence of foreign soldiers and taxes imposed by the unrepresented government in Kabul. The Taliban is fighting against a military occupation. Some of them are in the drug trade. We helped create the biggest narco state in the world. Some of them are fighting different clans and tribes, because when a foreign occupier moves in, it's divide and rule. And some of them are fighting to protect their valleys. There are less than 100,000 al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, according to General James Jones, who advises the president in the White House. The rest of them have moved into Pakistan, into Somalia, into Yemen, North Africa, Southeast Asia, etc. What, are we going to go to war against these countries as well? Where's the end here? The end is a mobilization for peace. The end is to come back to America and pay attention to the 45,000 people who die every year because they can't afford health insurance for diagnosis and treatment. It's important to know that unless we stay in Afghanistan eternally, we'll never outlast the insurgents, because our military occupation creates more and more insurgents, as General Casey and other Bush administration officials have admitted in public. It's important also to know that 25 to 30,000 Taliban with no Air Force, no Navy, no tanks, no artillery, no drones are tying down the most powerful military force in the world. I wonder why. It's because military occupation does that to people. They want to drive us out, as would be the case if the shoe was on the other foot. Some of you voted for Barack Obama as the least worst. Well, let me tell you, what difference in foreign and military affairs is there between Barack Obama and George W. Bush, except for the rhetoric? Even an Associated Press reporter on C-SPAN some months ago said there's really no difference. He still is using indefinite detention. He still is using excuses like state secrets to block lawsuits against the brutalization and the torture. He's still violating our treaties and our Constitution. And he's still refusing to condemn the brutal Israeli government blockade and siege of 1.5 million people in Gaza, which is the largest prison in the world, the largest prison. Let's stop talking apartheid. This is the largest open-air prison in the world, an international crime by all international law observers. Jonathan Tassini is running against the blockade, against the Israeli occupation of Palestine, for the Senate in New York State inside the Democratic primary. He ran in 2006 against the war and against Hillary Clinton and got 17% of the vote. You should support Jonathan Cassini. Look at his website. This is inside the Democratic Party. Can you imagine that? Wonders, behold. We have to focus on Congress. 67 members of the House voted against appropriation for the war in Afghanistan, led by Dennis Kucinich. That can grow. We have to invoke constitutional accountability for Congress to control the declaration of war authority and not give it up to an imperial presidency. We have to demand that John Conyers and his associates, the House Judiciary Committee, immediately move for an investigative hearing here about the fugitives from justice, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. And we need a simple law to enforce Congress to obey the Constitution and the Declaration of War authority. And here's what it is. A simple one-paragraph law. Anytime Congress and the White House wants to plunge the United States of America into a foreign war, all age-qualified sons, daughters, and grandchildren of all members of Congress will immediately be drafted into the armed services. That ought to concentrate their attention to control the executive branch and the military-industrial complex and the imperial presidency. Go back home, please. Double, triple, quadruple your members. Start small Congress agitation groups. Surround the offices of the senators and representatives and build, 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 and build. Thank you.
Today, the 7th anniversary of the war of aggression against Iraq. The Nuremberg judgment declared the war of aggression the supreme international crime, which it pretty obviously is. Our war of aggression was against an essentially defenseless country. We don't want to recognize that. George Bush wanted to play the hero on the deck of Abraham Lincoln, you remember. But that country had been bombed to daylights in the Gulf War. Their military armament was essentially destroyed. Their infrastructure was bombed out. And on Hiroshima Day of 1970, we had forced the United Nations to impose genocidal sanctions on Iraq. I guess we chose Hiroshima Day on purpose. That one act took more than 1.5 million lives, according to every organization that deals with health and food, children. UNICEF and Food and Agriculture and World Food Program and all the rest. 1.5 million lives were taken by sanctions imposed on the people, and half of the 1.5 million were children under 5. Stunted children, a generation of stunted children, impaired health on the general population. And we came in there like gangbusters, and it's been hell on earth ever since. And there has to be accountability for it. If there's not accountability, America will never stop warring. We have to believe we can do it. We have to begin with hearings. There got to be hearings in the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Department of Justice has to investigate. We have committed the supreme international crime, and those who are responsible for it have to be held accountable here by the people of the United States. We can't look to The Hague or some other organization to do it. This is our responsibility. We let it happen. We participated in its happening. And now it has to be paid for. You know, we've been in wars. I joined the Marines at age 17, right at the end of World War II, and we've been in wars more than half the years, I mean active wars, ever since. And we've been in inactive wars all over the planet ever since. And we've been spending more money on militarism than the rest of the world combined. And until we stop that, our country is a menace to life on the planet. Until we cut our military budget, declared today the untouchable part, you know. Everything else can go. The children can be out of school, they're sick and die, but we cannot touch the military budget because our war machine and our military-industrial complex and the rich of the nation depend on it. We've got to cut our military budget by more than 50% right away within 5-10 years. We've got to work at it. It's the only road to peace on earth. And then we've got to go down to 75% shortly after that and 10% left. And we'll be safer than we've ever been before. And we won't be a menace anymore. and we can make friends instead of enemies on the planet. So let's get up, roll up our sleeves, and not rest until we do it.
Is the honeymoon over with that war criminal over in the White House? Yeah! He became a war criminal when he was in the Senate, voting for funding these illegal wars. He became a criminal against our Constitution, voting to extend the Patriot Act, voting for the FISA Modernization Act, voting for the bailout. He's never been for us. And why were we giving him a free pass? He didn't deserve it. So we're out here now, and we have to shut it down now. We can't make any more excuses. We can't make more excuses for our government. We can't make any more excuses for the president, no matter what party that president comes from. The Democrats and the Republicans are the war party. And we have to get that through our head. They're the war party. We need you back here after the march to surround that White House and say, we're not for your crappy health care bill, but you have to bring the troops home now. We need the money for education and for jobs and for health care, not for these wars of empire. And it's great to see everybody. These are people that are camping with me across the street from the White House. We have to do what Mario Savio said back in the 60s. I'm going to close with that. Be here at 4 to help us surround the White House. Be here at 3:30. Come out to camp at 8 because the Popo is trying to shut down our camp. So be out there at 8. We need everybody there. The camp is on 1600 Constitution. We're on Constitution and they're trying to take away our constitutional rights. That's bullshit. And it's not about the Democrats, it's not about the Republicans. It's not about partisan politics, it's about the machine. And Mario Savio said, there comes a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. You've got to put your bodies upon the gears, and upon the levers, and upon the wheels, upon all the apparatus, and you have to make it stop. We have to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from running it all. Thank you.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. People united will never be. Don't let them divide and conquer, separate and control. Well, let's band together and make the empire fall. Let's look behind the curtain, let's follow the strings. No more fighting the symptoms and let's kill the disease. Yes, let's smash the system, cause it's the disease.